Good afternoon, and welcome to our series of webinars focused on bringing you information about COVID-19, infection control, and other nursing home-related topics. The information in these weekly webinars is geared toward long-term care and skilled nursing facilities, but we encourage everyone who's interested to attend. My name is Kathy Caudill. I'm a communications specialist with Quality Insights. Today's webinar is Effective Dementia Care Techniques During a Respiratory Outbreak. Everyone has entered the meeting on mute, but we will have a Q&A following the presentation. If you have questions or comments, please submit them using either the chat or the Q&A tool in your Zoom menu. We invite you to join us every Wednesday for more of our weekly webinars. Next week's topic is sepsis awareness and early intervention, essential training for nursing home facilities. If you're interested in joining, that will be the same time and place next Wednesday at 2 p.m. And now I'd like to introduce our guest today, Teepa Snow. Teepa is an occupational therapist with over 40 years of rich and varied clinical and academic experience. Her experience led her to the development of the GEMS States of Brain Change and Positive Approach training strategies. Her company, Positive Approach to Care, provides online and in-person education and products to support those living with brain change. She also co-founded the Snow Approach Foundation, a nonprofit organization based in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Teepa presents with extraordinary expertise and humor to audiences throughout the world. Teepa, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's good to be with y'all. And today we're going to be talking about this phenomena of we've got a respiratory outbreak and we have people living with dementia. And I can say right up front, not necessarily a great combo, which anyone who was around during COVID-19 is well aware of. Oh, I did the very thing I didn't mean to do, which is click the wrong button. Imagine that. And what I'd say is during COVID-19, there were times when we might have clicked the wrong button. What we thought we were doing and how we thought we were being helpful, we actually were potentially causing ourselves and the people we care for more stress, and we were missing out on some things. And it happened to some extent, if we look at the basic instructions we were given for working with other individuals in order to try to stay safe, we forgot some of the key elements of people living with dementia. So all these slides will be available. You can figure out how to get them. I know the group here will be excellent at helping you out. But what I want to focus on about for right now is talking about what's true about dementia. And the thing about dementia is that at least two parts of the human brain are actively dying. And one will be related to the hippocampal area. And that means it's related somehow to memory. But we got to be careful here because not all aspects of the hippocampus are immediate recall or short-term memory. There is a part of the hippocampus that's more related to spatial orientation or temporal orientation. So what that means is, yeah, some people are going to have the experience of, what did you say I was supposed to do? I know you said I was supposed to do something, right? And what you said is, I need you to stay in your room, Teepa, and not come out because you've tested positive for COVID. And even early in a dementia that involves my holding on to immediate recall and short-term information, even though you tell me that and I say, oh yeah, I got COVID. Yeah, that's not good. That's bad. Okay, I'll stay in my room. And I agree. One of the big challenges will be within a very short window of time, if I have a dementia consistent with Alzheimer's, it's highly probable that I will go, oh, you know what? It's time for bingo. I'm going to head on down to bingo because I'm much better at short-term information processing than I am immediate recall. So I looked at my schedule and it's like, oh, time for bingo. Yes, I love to go to bingo. That's a long-term memory. And I'm putting together short-term. Bingo starts at 2:30 and I love bingo, old memory. And what I'm forgetting is this new data about me being COVID positive, particularly if my symptoms are just like I have a cold, or maybe I feel pretty good actually, but I'm testing positive and I was out with the family and yeah, I did get COVID and I'm absolutely happy to spread. My challenge is not only that, I won't remember the mask. or I won't remember the rules, or I won't remember. And when I'm going somewhere, I'm keeping up with where I want to go to play bingo. What I'm not keeping up with is the details about how far apart I should sit from people. If I'm going to bingo, I shouldn't be doing X. So any kind of special rules that you come up with, even early in my condition, if I have immediate recall problems, and one of the parts of my brain is in that area, then I have problems. For other hippocampal problems, memory problems, it's different. So yeah, I have memory problems, but my memory is, where am I supposed to be? And this may happen later in certain dementias like Alzheimer's, but it could happen very early in a dementia like a frontal temporal dementia, where I can't quite figure out where I'm supposed to be. And I'm going to go look at where I'm supposed to be. So I'll go look. And I keep going from place to place. But when I go to a place and I look at it, I'm thinking, no, I'm not supposed to be here. I need to be somewhere else. And so I'm going from place to place to place. Now, obviously, in a respiratory breakout, you don't really want me going from place to place to place. And often with this, the other part of my brain that's damaged is the front part, the one that's reasonable, logical, and is going to have good impulse control. So when you say, Teepa, please go back to your room. I don't want to go back to my room. But Teepa, you need to be in your room. Please don't come out right now. Don't tell me what to do. I'll do what I want. You're not the boss of me. And of course, that looks like I'm being resistive to care. And bad news for everybody involved is the people that I'm talking about here, approximately 80% of them won't yet carry a diagnosis, even though the truth is they're already living with dementia. They may be in IL, they may be in AL, they may be in the nursing home for another condition. But the real reason they're in the nursing home, in part post-hospital stay, is that people around them aren't sure they could be okay at home with just home health support or even home care support. So they're in your facility. What we also know in many of these cases, that what we have is that dementia is chronic and it's not going to get better. It is progressive. It is over time going to deteriorate, and eventually it's terminal. But often the reason they're staying in a facility after a hospital stay is because of whatever took them into the hospital, the acute event. And then on top of that, when we talk about we're in a setting that's unfamiliar to them, we have issues both with temporal orientation, spatial orientation, and immediate recall, short-term memory. What ends up happening is the dementia, although it's not the reason for the placement, it becomes a huge factor in managing what will happen. So when we have a facility outbreak, one of the things we're going to have to be thinking about for people living with dementia is they come in different shapes and sizes. So I'm going to introduce you to a gentleman, and I'm going to just show you the video first. And I want you to take a look at him and listen to our interaction. And I want you to think, if there were a respiratory outbreak, what are some considerations you would have hearing and seeing what I'm doing with him in this video? So I've got to stop sharing for just a second to bring up the other thing that I want to share, which is the video. So we're going to take a look at him. He will be here. So this is my friend, my unknown friend. I've never met him before. It's my very first time working with him. His name is Stanley. Okay. Now, I will tell you the only information really that I had about Stanley is that he doesn't like to get up. He's already had an incident with staff where they had tried for about 20 minutes to get him up. It was two people. There was an issue. He scratched one of them and he's still in the bed. He's incontinent. It is approximately 10 a.m. and he has not been changed. He's not gotten his breathing treatment. He has COPD and emphysema. Additionally, the statement that is made is, be careful, he'll hit you. All right. So now we're going to talk about this with no respiratory outbreak. And I want you to watch my interaction with him. And let's take a look at it and see what happens with skilled care. Now, my skilled care has to do with how I approach, how I assess, how I engage, and how I work with Stanley. And you're going to be looking for visual cueing, auditory cueing, and sensory motor, movement touch cues that are helpful to Stanley. I'm going to have you, if you can, I'm thinking that it will work. If you can put some comments in the chat, and if one of the people who are on the panel don't mind taking a look in the chat and calling out some of the comments that are made in the chat about what people are noticing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, so you're going to watch what I do, listen to what I do, and make comment on what's working with Stanley, because the comment I heard was there's been an incident already, and be careful, he'll hit you.
Stanley. Stanley.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
good morning.
good morning.
It's Teepa.
What?
Teepa.
Teepa.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
You all right?
You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave you.
Yeah. You about ready to get up?
Well, cool.
You could. All right.
Good,
All right. Ooh, that's a cough you got going there.
yeah.
Yeah. Tell you what, let's pull the covers down. All right. You gonna help me?
Yeah.
Help me out here. Pull these covers down. That's it. Good. Pull them on down. That's it. Excellent. Now, roll to me.
Roll.
Roll over this way. Yeah. Come on over this way. There you go. Excellent. Well, now there. You're looking good. Can I turn the light on?
You want to?
Well, let me do that. I think that'll make it a little easier for us to see. Watch your eyes. I'm going to cut it on.
Cut it off.
Oh. There we go. Now. How you doing?
It's pretty good.
Doing pretty good? You had quite a cough there.
Now,
You had quite a cough.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How about we get up and go to the bathroom,
Well,
and then we'll get you dressed. How's that?
that's what you want to do. That's what we'll do.
Well, let's go do it. Okay? Put your feet down and let's stand up and come with me.
Okay, now I'm going to pause this right there. So tell me a couple things folks are noticing about this interaction. What do they pick up on?
All right, so here's some of the comments we got. To start, someone noted a positive approach and taking his hand carefully builds trust. Someone said developing a good rapport. A couple people noted that you met him at eye level and got down on his level. Someone said a simple and kind introduction. A couple people said asking permission or asking instead of telling. And then having him participate as much as he can, going at his pace, not rushing, using touch and positive approach, reassuring touch to the knee, giving choice, and giving time to respond.
Yeah. So if you add all that up, if you notice at the bottom of the screen, it took 1 minute and 48 seconds for him to go unwilling to participate, incontinent, in the bed. 2 staff members had spent approximately 20 minutes trying to get him up. There was an incident report, and he still hadn't gotten his medications, his treatment, nor care. So if we then look at that, and we look at 1 minute and 48, and he's heading to the bathroom, which approach has saved time, would you say? Anybody want to guess? Which one has resulted in care?
Someone said your approach.
Yeah. So now let's add a respiratory event going on in the building where we have to isolate. We're trying to isolate people. We're trying to get people. So let's put a mask on me. Okay. And I have gloves on. And let's say Stanley is somebody who has a respiratory virus. Now, do I still want to give care to Stanley? I think the answer is yes. I mean, that's one of our mandates. what have I done to reduce risk by doing it this way? Let's sort of go through the laundry list of what have I done that reduces risk in the building in general? What are some things that have reduced risk dramatically?
Someone said try an N95, shield, gown, and gloves.
Yeah, so I'm going to have all that stuff on. Absolutely. But the bottom line is how many people had to go in that room? Just me, just one person. How long am I going to be in there, and how many negative interactions and trying to grab and pull and tug? And there was a scratching, there were interactions that were physical in nature. How close were people if they were getting that kind of interaction? So I would say if we had a respiratory issue going on, this approach is actually going to reduce the risk. Because I want you to imagine me this time when I'm interacting with him, I have a glove, gown, and I have everything on. Let's watch how I'm actually interacting with Stanley. What is happening during this that is actually more based on how does Stanley see and experience me? And is he actually listening to the exact words or the general idea of my conversation? So let's imagine I'm coming in, and I'll muffle my sound a little bit.
Stanley.
Okay, so when I first get in there, is Stanley at all aware I'm present? At all? And the answer is no. If I'm in gloves, shield, and I have my gown on and that information, and so now I'm coming in, how important is it that Stanley doesn't see me leaning over him and invading his space and putting my hands on him before he knows I'm there? What do y'all think as far as risk goes? Because he does have significant amounts of dementia on board. Pretty important that I call his name and he notices me before I start trying to do something more physical or enter his immediate space.
Stanley.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
good morning.
good morning.
It's Teepa.
What?
Teepa.
So has Stanley actually turned and looked at me yet? Or is he simply listening to the back and forth, and he's allowing me to take his hand and get connected? What are you noticing? Is this all about looking at me and making eye contact a lot? Or is it that verbal back and forth of a social sort of greeting sort of thing first thing in the morning? Without that skill, Stanley, if I lean over him, Stanley may see me as the space invader or the really scary person. Being down into the side, what does that allow Stanley to recognize, turn and see? You look weird. Well, that's okay because my name's already weird. Notice how few words. Stanley. It's Teepa. And he goes, it's what? Teepa. So whether he gets it or not, I've delivered it in a friendly, familiar, simplified language.
Teepa.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Now, my hand position, it's like I'm shaking hands and then we lock thumbs and I'm holding on and he's holding on, and it's like we're in a position of security. So if he's going to do anything with his hand, what would he need to do first that will allow my brain time to respond rather than get panicky and react? My hand and his hand, we've got him like this. I'm gently holding on and he's holding on. Thumbs are connected, hands are around. What would he have to do if he wanted to do something else before he could do anything else? What's the first thing he would do? And I'll show you if you can see the screen. Very first thing he has to do.
There's saying let go of his hand
To
or
let go of me. So I get a physical cue. I get a sensory motor cue that says he's wanting me He wants to let go of me. If he wants to let go of me, I'm going to lean my body further back to give greater space because he's telling me something about you isn't working for me. That's my cue that helps me stay safe and present with Stanley and continue my interaction. As it is, he's fine with my touch. I want to know he's good with my touch before I start doing things with Stanley. And then my first verbal with Stanley is,
You all right?
You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave you.
Yeah. You about ready to get up?
Well,
you doing all right? You about ready to get up? Chit-chatty phrases, but are you about ready to get up is an opportunity for me to process what does he think about getting up? Because the previous experience with people was that he wasn't enjoying it. He fought him. He didn't want to get out of the bed. So I'm giving him a chance to give me info and to pick up on, are you wanting to do this? Because I'd rather know ahead of time that he's not thrilled with it. So let's see what he says.
You could. All right. All right. Ooh, that's a cough you got going there.
So what do I know he hasn't had yet, even though it was supposed to be done at 8 a.m.? I mean, I know he's 2 hours behind. Am I going to get panicky and go, yeah, I've really got to get that treatment? Do I want to do the treatment in the bed, or do I want to do it when he's up and he's upright? What do you think with somebody like Stanley? He's got dementia. What's been the experience when they've tried to work with him? What are people telling me? Be careful, he'll hit you. Well, I'd much rather have someone upright with a mask on doing their treatment than I would lying in the bed uncomfortable with me leaning. So these are, when you think about it, they're logical. But when we have respiratory events taking place in the building, how important is it that I don't get my mask and my stuff pulled off of me because he's in distress? Really important to me? Yes, because we'd be one more person down if I end up getting COVID. So we really want to be protective of both people. So look at the distance between. I mean, it's, you know, if I had my mask, he still can process what I'm asking.
Yeah. Tell you what, let's pull the covers down.
Now, notice the cue was I touched the covers when I said, let's pull the covers down. And then again, I let go of him. So now I take the hand back and do the
All
motion.
right, you gonna help me?
yeah.
Help me out
Once
here.
I
Pull these
started,
covers down.
Watch
That's
who
it.
takes
Good.
over.
Pull them on down. That's it. Excellent.
Not only does he take over the covers, he pulls his legs up, which is great because that's the next step to getting out of the bed. Now, again, all of this is happening. If we have glove gowns on, has he still looked at me? Is he watching me closely? Is he worried about me as a human being this close to him? Are you seeing him closely regard me and worry about what I'm up to? Or is he simply working with me step by step to get to this task completion? So
Now roll to me.
Roll.
Roll over this way. Yeah. Come on over this way. There you go. Excellent.
now, by saying, when he says roll, and I give him the motion, the visual cue, roll to me, did I put my hands on him at all? Did you see any physical contact whatsoever? Who was able to get himself from the bed, sitting on the side of the bed without any assistance whatsoever physically? What could and might very well happen if I do put my hands while he's trying to do this task and he has dementia? Every physical interaction we have that is with someone who's not in great control and is feeling threatened increases the risk, not only that we're going to have an interaction that isn't positive, but it's actually breaking this boundary between the two of us. That's higher risk for making sure that this thing that we have, one of us has, Stanley has, isn't going to get somewhere else. And so this idea of let's be thoughtful through the whole thing is really
Well,
vital.
now there, you're looking good. Can I turn the light on?
You don't do.
Well, let me do that. I think that'll make it a little easier for us to see. Watch your eyes. I'm going to cut it on.
Cut it off.
Oh,
Now, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I wanted to really dig into this a little bit, because this is sort of the core of what goes wrong when we talk about dementia and we have a respiratory outbreak. Our thought is we need to keep people in spaces and we need to keep people controlled and we need to have 2 people go in so we can get this done and get out. And what I'd say is all too often that thinking actually makes things worse. What's most important when people are living with dementia is to establish a relationship that says, I'm present, we'll work this through, let's figure it out, so that the energy stays at a stable, comfortable level, and I don't have someone in a state of unmet need, of unmet desire, of feeling like they have to go somewhere or go do something or fight for something. Because when we get into that situation, then what we have is somebody who's going to be on the move, active, moving, resistive, breathing harder, more worried, more distressed, and more likely to enter other spaces and do things that are not what somebody else wants them to do. So I'm going to go back to sharing slides for a few minutes because we're moving quickly. And it may not feel like it, but I've covered a lot of territory with this one example. So what we want to think about is, how might people respond to masking? How might they respond to this isolation protocol? And so if indeed they cannot tolerate being in the room, I need to look at a space that's a little bigger space where they could enter this other space, and it is also designated as a space they can be in. So frequently what we want is people to stay within one zone. But if I have someone who has temporal disorientation and spatial disorientation, I may need to create a space where the individual and a couple of individuals who all or both or a group has this exposure, that they can be in this space, but perhaps I should create a space that's a little bit larger with some places where people can be. So if you look at my space over here, you'll see there's a couch, but then over here, there's a tabletop where people could be. And yet over here, where I am, there's a desk. So I have 3 definite defined spaces where if I had things set up in those spaces, different things could be taking place for different individuals. All of them are greater than 6 feet apart, and each of these have designated locations. If I bring people in and have engagement opportunities in those spaces, then I'm creating a second location that people can be, and they still are living their life. So Stanley is still getting up out of the bed and going somewhere. Because if I don't have that, what I have is a situation where I'm not actually doing well by Stanley if he's just sitting in his room. And without him sitting in his room alone, Stanley may not really be tolerant of staying somewhere. So I want to bring him somewhere and then have somebody to be with that he enjoys being with. Now, what that also means is we may need to really look at restricting individuals who are coming in and coming out, but that doesn't necessarily mean at the same time we want to restrict what people are able to do. So we may want to increase activity possibilities, but we have people in spaces where one person can actually support several people by spacing out where they are and then recognizing the ability that we have to do something vocally and visually that's very appealing and keeps people where they are, but engages them. So I'm going to pause because what we know is a lot of things that we have done in the past, we've got to bring back when we have another episode of respiratory issues. But we need to get better again, and maybe for the first time, at making sure that we are really using our eyes and our bodies rather than just our mouths to communicate. We are also going to wait and make sure that when we're doing the gloves and the sleeves, we want to make sure that our gloves, if at all possible, are a neutral color, not blue, when people are living with dementia. We may want to have a laminated picture of ourselves attached to the collar of our shirt where we can show people what we might look like with a name rather than our typical name tag. And we might want to think about wearing an apron or something over top with pockets in it, so that we have things that we could offer people, or we have the possibility of carrying extra things with us when we travel, so that we're not having to figure out, yikes, I got stuff on my gloves from doing intimate care. Now I'm going to have to unglove. So we want to think about these extra things that we're considering. And we also want to think about the idea of the difference between me going, I'm going to stop share here. Something to drink versus, would you like something to drink? Would you like something to drink? Something to drink? What do you like? This. Would you like? Hot or cold? So learning the art of connecting and communicating with limited visuals of my face doesn't limit my visuals otherwise. So I'm going to pause here because I think I'm at time, not because I got done with everything, but I did the best I could with the time we had allotted. Hopefully it might have given you some ideas.
All right, thank you, Teepa. If anyone has a question or comment, please submit it using either the chat or the Q&A tool in your Zoom menu. And while we're waiting, I'd like to just remind everyone again about next week's webinar and invite anyone who wants to come. And that will be, let me pull my list back up. That will be on sepsis awareness and early intervention, essential training for nursing home facilities. So that will be next Wednesday at 2. We invite you to bring your questions to our live chats every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. One of our quality improvement specialists will be there to answer questions on topics such as quality improvement initiatives, infection control, or MDS coding. You can find the links to our live chats and our webinars in the newsletter we send out every Friday called the Last Minute Lowdown. And if you'd like to receive that newsletter but don't think you're on the mailing list, you can email me at caudill@qualityinsights.org and I will get you on that list. And now I would like to see if we have any questions. Let's see, so far, a lot of people saying that this is a wonderful presentation and very informational. And they said, thank you. A lot of people saying thank you. I don't see any questions so far. I also meant to mention, if you have a question that you'd like to ask out loud, you can use the raise your hand tool and we will give you the ability to unmute yourself to ask your question.
And Teepa, I was wondering too, if, in addition to the drink, are there any other suggestions? I mean, I think I've found over the years that when working with dementia residents, they respond to your manner and your approach very, very much so.
It's all about
that it's all about that very much. But when you are having, I think those challenges that you mentioned with the mask and the muffled and all of that, you gave some really good recommendations. Are there a few other? I see you're ready to.
Yeah. And so one of the really important things is sometimes without thinking, we make our jobs harder. And I'm going to go ahead and for people who may not be as familiar, it's one of the changes that almost everybody living with dementia has by the middle of the disease, which is when most people are getting a diagnosis. If you put your hands, make them 2 O's and put them up to your eyes, you're going to approximate the amount of visual data somebody living with dementia can take in, which is center field data. So they take in approximately 18 inches across of data in any moment in time. So one of the things that happens is when I go to help you brush your teeth, if you have your binoculars on, you will never see the toothbrush coming until it hits your lips. And if that happens, then there's often a startle. So one technique is to position yourself sideways and then show the person the toothbrush in front. So they're like you guys in the screen, and then go, so you're gonna brush your teeth. And then I take your hand in the hand under hand. So now you have your hand with mine, and I go, here you go, ah, and I make that sound. Now I'm gonna do it right now. I'm gonna go, everybody go, ah, say ah, ah. You don't have to see my mouth. The no is open your mouth. And then I go, okay, here you go. And the trick when you're doing it is to start on the side, because the front of your mouth is the most sensitive part of a human mouth. The side, a little less so. So I'll start on the teeth at the side, and your brain goes, oh, yeah, mouth care. Got it. And so their hand and my hand are working in unison. And then I can switch to the other side, and then I'll go, open, okay. And now we flip. And when I'm rotating the brush, because your hand is on my wrist, your brain feels that rotation and your brain goes, oh, we're switching surfaces. Got it. And so we see lots less resistance. And if there's lots less resistance, I'm having lot less opportunities for negative interaction, which means you're less likely to want to get out of here, get away, elope. And so it increases the odds that we're going to have an interaction that results in care, but also an interaction that results in you being okay with being where you're at.
Thank you so much. That oral care, especially, that's a point that honestly over the years I forgot about that with the vision. That's really a good reminder.
And we may want to also think about where we place the food on the table. Some things that we'll notice is people don't want to be pushed up as tight to the table. If I'm noticing somebody's throwing their hands out there, what it means is they've lost the visual regard of how close they are, and they actually think they're about to hit the table. So we want to pause, let their hands relax, and say, see if we can scoot up a little closer so they can feel the edge of the table and realize where their body is. But what that means is when they go to eat, if they're talking at all, they'll lose their plate because they're looking across the table. And they're much more likely to reach for somebody else's food than they are to actually realize their own food is down in front of them, because they're visually regarding social, not task. So if I want to direct somebody, I'll have to go, oh, looks like you've got some good stuff here on the plate. And I might actually point to the things on the plate and hand them the fork and then not say anything else, because if I say something and they look up at me, they've lost the plate. And so it's the art of recognizing if someone's starting to engage in something at that point. Don't say anything, because they've already started the next thing you wanted. Let them do it. And then when it seems like they're at a pause point, that's when you go, enjoying that. Yeah, here's a drink. And hold the drink up center field. Here you go. Now, if somebody puts their hand out and is chasing around the drink, what it means is they're further in dementia, and they've only got monocular ability, not binocular, and they've lost depth perception. And if that's the case, you're going to see them using their hands a lot. And during a respiratory outbreak, these are your least favorite people, because wherever they go and whatever they do, this is where they're using their hands as their second eye. So wherever they travel, they're putting their hands on everything, because that's how they figure things out. So they actually pat or tap or touch the edges of things. They're often roaming around in this posture. They're using their wheelchairs, pulling themselves along with their hands. So these are the folks that you're like, ay, 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 ay. And if we think we can keep gloves on them, I'd love to watch that. That'd be an adventure for me to watch that happen. So what it means is we've got to be prepared for cleaning a lot. The good news is, there are folks living with dementia who like to clean. That would be another opportunity that somebody does have gloves on and they get to clean, because it could give somebody a mission. And often during this time, people with greater ability, where they feel trapped, need a mission. So giving them the responsibility of every 15 minutes, going down the hall and cleaning all the rails. And they have their glove on and they've got this job, and it's very fulfilling, and we're very thankful. We thank you so much. Can I get you a cup of coffee? That would be wonderful. How about some water? That would be great. Boy, you're a hard worker. I really appreciate you. Now I know where they are, what they're doing, and it's got purpose and value, and it's helping us, but it's also keeping them out of doing things that might be more things I don't want them doing.
Oh, all great tips. Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation. I think we heard from everybody here, and I think we all agree this is wonderful. We appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Thanks for the opportunity and thank you for what y'all do.
Thank you. And there's lots of nice comments in the chat if you want to take a minute just to skim through those. Everyone thought this was a great presentation and thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
I think that's it for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Before we sign off, we'd like to ask everyone here to please answer a short evaluation of today's webinar. It's anonymous and will show as a pop-up as soon as the webinar ends. And if you have a couple minutes to fill that out, we'd appreciate it. Let's see, got a couple more comments. I think it's just more people saying thank you. Some people said very applicable to my position. Thank you. It was a great pleasure. And yeah, just lots of nice comments in there. All right. And I think I will go ahead and wrap us up. Teepa, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and for this great presentation. And I'd like to thank everybody here for coming this week, and we hope to see you again soon.